Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of The 8-Diagram Pole Fighter, a Hong Kong martial arts flick from the 1980s. Now, some websites have this listed as a 1983 film, while some websites have this listed as a 1984 film. I'm just going with 1984. As usual, Wikipedia provides a nice little plot synopsis for us to use and paraphrase. So the Liao dynasty army succeeds in trapping General Yeung Yip and his 7 sons at Golden Beach. Now, Yeung Yip and his sons are all killed or captured in the ambush, except for the 5th son and the 6th son, who managed to escape. The 6th son, played by Alexander Fu, returned home, but was severely traumatized emotionally and psychologically by these events. Meanwhile, the 5th son, played by Gordon Liu, sought refuge in a monastery in Mount Wutai, but the monastery leaders initially did not consider him calm enough to be a Buddhist monk. He eventually convinces them. As blades were not allowed inside of the monastery, he used his training in spears to practice with a pole, eventually developing the unique 8-diagram pole fighting technique. Now, the 8-diagram pole fighter follows the typical storytelling structure of an old-school kung fu flick. Something bad happens near the beginning, and the protagonist trains to succeed in an act of vengeance or rescue later on. However, it's the execution that counts in a film such as this, and the 8-diagram pole fighter does a great job at doing what it attempts to do, and consequently it one-ups most of its competition. So for example, the training sequences are very entertaining, but also very different from what I've seen before. The big training apparatus that is used are wolf sculptures, for lack of a better term, that are made out of hardwood. Now, the protagonists train their bow techniques. Remember, the bow is like a long stick. I think that was Donatello's weapon from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? I think I got that right. So they train with their bows on these wolf sculpture things, and they smack their weapons against it, and they use different methods, and they train that way. But the goal is not to destroy the sculptures, but to weaken the enemy, and then use their bows to rip out the metal teeth that are inside the sculptures. So it's definitely a very unique training regimen that I really enjoyed watching. Definitely something different there. But what about the fighting itself, right? Which is the whole reason why we watch these movies, or at least most of us. Well, the fights are very impressive. The focus, not surprisingly, is on pole fighting. Now, since the variety of weapons in this film is fairly limited, this kind of restricts the variety of action a little bit, but the bows are showcased in a number of different ways to help kind of compensate for that. And the tactics that the antagonists use to counter the pole's effectiveness are pretty cool. So, for example, the bad guys also use like a long pole type weapon, but their versions have like a small section that's almost like a slinky, and for lack of a better term, and that section wraps around the bow of the opponent, and they're able to like grapple it and rip it out of their hands or whatever. So there's some pretty interesting stuff in this movie, for sure, in the fighting realm, in terms of techniques and strategies. Now, the big final fight, which involves coffins that are stacked on top of one another, yes, you heard that correctly, is quite fascinating and awesome, with some surprises to enjoy and some bloody violence, too, which I appreciated. Now, the director and actor here in the 8-diagram pole fighter are Lau Kar-Lung and Gordon Liu, respectively. I covered both of these men when I reviewed Heroes of the East on my channel previously. It's always nice to see a collaboration with these gentlemen because they're very talented at what they do, and they work well together. And I will be sure to watch some more of their collaborations, or rewatch them. I've seen most of them, I think. But I will cover more of these guys in the future. Now, actress Kara Hui is also in this film as a side character who gets in a few fights of her own. It's always a joy seeing her in a movie. I like her quite a bit, and I'm really looking forward to her recent film, Mrs. K, from 2016, which is supposed to kick some serious butt, so I'm definitely looking forward to that one. Now, one unfortunate piece of news that is associated with the 8-diagram pole fighter is that one of the main actors, Alexander Fu, died in a car accident before this film was finished. So consequently, his role was reduced late in production, and his character does kind of disappear during the final third. But still, the filmmaker's decision to lean on Gordon Liu to finish things off was the best possible solution given these unfortunate circumstances. And I do think that the story still flows well, despite Alexander's absence. And in the end, it feels like Gordon Liu is the main protagonist throughout much of the film, which is a good thing. You know, it doesn't feel choppy or random. And because Alexander Fu's character is a character who is gradually losing his mind, you know, it doesn't feel too odd that he's not a big part of the finale. You know, it kind of makes sense from a storytelling perspective. So they did a good job, you know, taking this one past the finish line. So in conclusion, if you're into old school kung fu flicks, 8-diagram pole fighter, man, comes strongly recommended. And fortunately, it is widely available on DVD and Amazon Instant Streaming in the United States. So as always, we will see you next time.